I emptied every last cent of my savings into that little house. It sat neatly behind my parents' home, a modest guest house with white siding and blue shutters, the kind of place I imagined I'd call mine when the world got too loud. It wasn't a reckless dream. Buying my own place was out of reach, and it was my mother, Sophia, who first suggested it. "It'll always be yours, Ethan," she had said, touching my arm like she meant it. "An investment in your future." I believed her. I believed all of them. Every weekend, every spare day off, I worked with the contractors. I picked the fixtures, the flooring, the cabinets that clicked shut softly, like a secret you didn't want to wake. It was meticulous, careful, crafted with the quiet hope that maybe, finally, I was building something they couldn't take away from me. Then, the day it was finished, as I stood there holding a tiny set of keys like they were a crown, my mother smiled too brightly, and my younger brother Daniel slung an arm around my shoulders, like he hadn't spent years pretending I didn't exist. "You're all set, bro," Daniel said, and my mom chimed in almost casually, "Actually, Ethan, Daniel needs the house more right now." Then, just like that, my father dropped my duffel bag at my feet, like a punchline without the joke. "You're young, you'll figure it out," Sophia added, smoothing down her skirt, like we were discussing the weather, not gutting me alive. Daniel and his fiancée really need the space to start their life. I must have looked like an idiot standing there, mouth half open, still clinging to the fantasy that maybe they were joking. Spoiler, they weren't. They had never built that house for me. They had built it for him. I just funded the project. And in that moment, I learned something permanent. Love in my family was conditional. And my tab had just expired. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't even flinch. I just picked up my bag and walked away. From them, from that house, from the version of me who thought trying harder would ever be enough. The funny thing about walking away is that nobody expects you to actually do it. They think you'll rage, cry, bargain, anything but leave. But I didn't owe them another scene. I just disappeared. The first few days were blissfully quiet. No calls, no texts. I think they thought I'd crawl back, desperate for scraps of affection and a mouldy corner of that guest house. They didn't understand that when you break someone like me, you don't get to ask for pieces back. When the silence stretched into a week, the cracks started showing. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails from Mum, Sophia, 1 awkward text from Daniel that simply said, "Bro, can you call me?" I didn't. I moved in with a college buddy temporarily, got myself a small storage unit for my things, and began looking for something permanent. Somewhere I didn't have to wonder if the ground I was standing on would be ripped away when it became convenient. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, or should I say, back at the suburban facade of togetherness, things weren't going according to their master plan. Turns out when you rush a house to completion using the cheapest contractor your father knows, the one who knows a guy who can do it for half the price, you get what you pay for. The guest house, the one I had spent months overseeing with obsessive care, was starting to fall apart like a paper boat in a rainstorm, leaking pipes, faulty wiring, and, my personal favourite, the smell of mould seeping into the walls before a single moving box crossed the threshold. The first voicemail from Sophia was almost clipped. "Ethan, we're having some issues with the house. Call me back when you can." I didn't. Not because I was being petty, but because, for the first time in my life, it wasn't my job to fix what they broke. And oh, they had broken it beautifully. You can only ignore so many voicemails before curiosity starts to nibble at you. And honestly, after the 5th call from Mother Sophia, escalating from politely concerned to thinly veiled desperation, I caved and listened. "Ethan, there's water coming through the walls. The plumber says it's a disaster. "We're not sure what went wrong, but Daniel can't move in yet. Call us back immediately." I leaned back on the battered couch in my buddy's apartment, phone warm against my ear, and just smiled. The house was sinking, literally, and I wasn't there to bail it out this time. They had cut me out, and now, poetic as it was, the house was cutting them down. At first, they tried subtlety. Sophia left another message, her voice sharp with irritation masked as concern. "We just need your insight, Ethan. You worked with the contractors. Maybe you can tell us if something got missed." "Missed?" I thought, almost laughing aloud. "Yes, something got missed. Like your loyalty to the only person who made that house stand upright." Then Daniel tried, "Bro, come on, we're family. You gotta help us out." Family, that word again. Always used like a lasso when they needed something. Funny how it only applied when it was convenient. After a week of silence from me, the tone shifted from pleading to blaming. That's when the text messages started coming. Not just from Sophia and Daniel, but from extended family too. My cousin Olivia texted, "Hey, Ethan. Aunt Sophia said you left the guest house half finished and abandoned them. What's going on? Abandoned them?" I almost choked on my coffee. That's when I realised they weren't just panicking about the house. They were panicking about appearances. In our little suburban enclave, reputation was currency. And Sophia couldn't exactly parade Daniel's new domestic dream when the walls were leaking and the lights flickered like a horror movie set. Worse, they had promised the house to Daniel's fiancée, a girl named Claire, who apparently had no idea she was about to marry into a 3-ring circus of broken plumbing and broken promises. I didn't need to lift a finger. The truth was doing all the heavy lifting for me. Then came the real kicker. One evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Grandfather George, someone who didn't get involved unless the situation was truly spectacular. I answered, more out of respect than curiosity. "Ethan, your mother's been telling quite the story," George said, voice dry as the Arizona desert where he retired. "She says you ran off and left a financial and legal disaster behind. Is that true?" I leaned my head back against the wall, suppressing a bitter laugh. "No, Grandpa. I built the house, paid for every brick, every wire. They just didn't finish the final permits after they kicked me out." There was a pause, a long one. I could practically hear the gears turning across the miles. "That tracks," George said finally. "Your father's shortcut habits weren't exactly a secret at family reunions." Another pause. "You coming to Sunday dinner?" I blinked. Sunday dinners were sacred, mostly reserved for passive-aggressive gossip sessions disguised as family bonding. "I wasn't invited," I said carefully. "You're invited now," George said. "And you should come. Might be fun to let the truth breathe a little." For the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real, chest-deep laugh. Because for once, it wasn't me scrambling for approval. It was them scrambling for a version of reality they could no longer control. Meanwhile, the house continued its slow, spectacular implosion. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had heard through Olivia that mold was now spreading in the walls, that the city had refused occupancy permits because the final plumbing and electrical inspections were never officially cleared. Daniel's fiancée had apparently moved back in with her parents temporarily. Wedding plans were on hold. And Sophia had been overheard at a neighbour's brunch saying the whole thing was Ethan's fault. I didn't even have to lift a pen. Karma was painting the town with a paint roller dipped in their lies. On Sunday, I put on my cleanest shirt, combed my hair, and drove to the family house, the place where I'd spent years believing if I worked hard enough, loved hard enough, stayed small enough, I would finally be enough. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I felt peaceful. Because here's the thing about building something with your own two hands. Even if they take it from you, they can't take the knowing from you. And I knew, down to the marrow of my bones, that I hadn't failed. They had. They just hadn't realized it yet. The smell of overcooked roast beef hit me the second I stepped through the door. Sophia stood in the kitchen, apron crisp, fake smile even crisper. Daniel lurked by the staircase, pretending to scroll through his phone, and my father, who had wisely stayed out of this mess until now, gave me a curt nod from the living room. Grandfather George was already seated at the head of the dining table, his hands folded like he was presiding over a courtroom instead of a family dinner. It felt like walking into a trap. If I hadn't spent the last few weeks learning just how little their approval meant, I might have flinched. Instead, I smiled. Polite, controlled. Let them wonder why. Dinner started with small talk, so forced it could have been scripted. Sophia talked about Daniel's upcoming wedding. Daniel grunted something about real estate prices. My father threw in a comment about how young people these days don't know how to commit. The irony was so thick, I nearly choked on my water. But I said nothing. I didn't need to. Because Sophia couldn't help herself. The tighter she tried to hold onto the narrative, the more it leaked through her words like water through a cracked dam. Of course, we're just so grateful that Daniel has a place to start his life, she said, Mo reaching over to squeeze his hand dramatically. Even if there have been some challenges. That was their new word for it. The mold, the flooding, the electrical failures, all boiled down to challenges caused, apparently, by my selfishness. I caught George's eye across the table. He raised one eyebrow, barely, and I knew he was waiting. Finally, right as dessert hit the table, a lopsided apple pie that looked like it had suffered a small landslide, George set down his fork and cleared his throat. So, Sophia, he said, his voice casual in that way that only meant one thing, danger. Tell me again about this unfinished house Ethan abandoned. The room froze. Sophia's smile stiffened. Oh, it's nothing, Dad, she said too quickly. Just a little miscommunication. Ethan left before the final paperwork was filed. It's been complicated. Sure. Like stealing someone's work and then blaming them when it all goes wrong. George turned to me. Ethan, your side? I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. Then calmly, I built that house with my own money, I said, my voice steady. Every nail, every pipe, every appliance. The only thing I didn't finish was the final city inspections, because the day it was ready, they gave it to Daniel instead. A gasp from one of my aunts. A fork clattered to a plate. Sophia flushed scarlet. Ethan, that's not fair, she started. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Is it not? I asked softly. Because it seems pretty simple to me. You asked me to invest everything I had into something you never intended for me to keep. Another ripple of discomfort around the table. Daniel finally spoke up, his voice defensive and brittle. Bro, it's not like you were paying rent or anything. You didn't even, I cut him off with a look. I didn't pay rent because I paid for the whole damn house, Daniel. Calm, measured, devastating. More silence. Even the forks stopped moving. Across the table, George leaned back in his chair, arms folded, the faintest smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. He knew. And now, so did everyone else. They tried to rally, of course. They always did. Sophia launched into a speech about family obligations, about sacrifice, about how Daniel needed the space to build his future. But the room wasn't buying it anymore. Olivia exchanged a glance with another cousin. Someone coughed awkwardly. The social fabric Sophia had stitched so tightly was starting to fray, thread by ugly thread. And the best part, I hadn't lifted a single accusing finger. I had just spoken my truth, plain and simple, and let it settle like dust over a forgotten battlefield. Later, as I stood in the driveway about to leave, George clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Good job, kid," he said gruffly. "You didn't even have to raise your voice." I smiled, tired but lighter than I had been in months. "It's easy," I said. "When you finally realize you don't owe anyone an explanation for walking away from people who never saw you clearly in the first place." George nodded, a rare look of pride flashing across his face. "Took you long enough," he said, "but you got there, and I had. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting to stay at a table that had never had a seat for me. I had built my own table. Even if the first one rotted from the inside out, the next one would be stronger, built somewhere else, built for me." It's funny how silence, once a punishment, can start to feel like a gift. After that dinner, the calls slowed, the texts trickled into nothingness. No more demands for help, no more guilt-laced voicemails about what family means, and how could I turn my back on them? Sophia, Daniel, even my father, they retreated into the familiar comfort of rewriting history. Maybe somewhere down the line I'd become the villain in the family story, the ungrateful son, the runaway brother, the selfish one who abandoned them in their time of need. I didn't care. Because what they didn't understand, what they never would, was that I hadn't abandoned family. I had simply recognized that not everyone deserves the title. Meanwhile, the fallout was satisfying in a quiet, inevitable way. The guest house was officially condemned by the city 3 months later. Plumbing failures, electrical code violations, black mold so bad the remediation costs would have exceeded rebuilding. Daniel's engagement collapsed under the weight of it all. Claire wasn't interested in marrying into chaos, the neighbours whispered. The sympathy that Sophia had tried to summon for her ungrateful son dried up faster than spilled wine on sun-baked concrete. Karma doesn't send you a notice when it arrives. It just sets up camp quietly and lets you stew in the life you built for yourself. And Sophia? Last I heard, she was telling anyone who'd listened that the contractors had betrayed her trust, and Daniel deserved better. And kids these days just don't respect hard work. Maybe that's true. Maybe some of us just stopped respecting exploitation dressed up as obligation. As for me, I moved across town, found a tiny, sunlit apartment with creaky floors and too much street noise, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream about leaking pipes or collapsing roofs or betrayal hiding behind every doorframe. I dreamt about silence, golden, complete, my own. I started rebuilding my life brick by brick, the same way I'd built that house. Only this time, I was the architect and the owner. No false promises, no one holding a rug to yank out from under me. I found new friends, old friends I'd neglected when trying so hard to win battles that were never mine. I poured energy into work, hobbies, late-night walks under city lights that didn't judge me for existing. I started therapy too, something I'd once scoffed at, back when I thought being strong meant carrying everything alone. Turns out strength also means knowing when to put things down. Turns out it takes real strength to say, "This doesn't belong to me anymore," and walk away. It wasn't all easy. Some days I missed the idea of family more than the reality of it. There were mornings when I'd reach for my phone out of old habit, wondering if maybe this time Sophia would call to say something different, something real, something like, "We're sorry." She never did. They never did. And slowly, I stopped needing them to. Months later, I got a call from George. I answered immediately. Old habits die hard, but some habits are worth keeping. "How's the new place treating you?" he asked. "It's small," I said, grinning into the receiver. "It creaks. It leaks a little when it rains, but it's honest, George chuckled. Better than a pretty lie, he said. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. He told me stories about his youth, about mistakes he made and lessons that took too long to learn. He didn't offer advice. He didn't tell me what I owed anyone. He just listened. It was the first real conversation I'd had with family in what felt like years, maybe ever. When we hung up, I sat on my rickety old couch and stared out the window. The city buzzed and throbbed outside, messy, chaotic, alive. And I realized something. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to hand me a place at the table. I wasn't even angry. I was free. Freedom doesn't look the way I thought it would. It's not grand gestures or triumphant moments. It's quieter. Like cooking dinner in your own kitchen without waiting for someone to comment. Like laughing at your own jokes and not worrying who hears. Like decorating your apartment however the hell you want, even if it looks ridiculous. It's living a life that doesn't ask you to shrink or apologize or prove your worth just to earn basic kindness. It's walking through the wreckage of everything you thought you wanted, family, approval, belonging, and realizing you don't need to rebuild it the same way. You can build something better, something truer, something yours. Maybe Sophia and Daniel still think they won. Maybe, in their minds, they got the house, the sympathy, the narrative. Let them have it. I got something better. I got myself. And for once, that's more than enough. Story 2. You know how people say you can never really know someone, even the ones closest to you. I used to roll my eyes at that. Now, I live by it. I'm Natalie, 31. A few years back, I married Jordan, who's now 34. We met during our last year of college. I was managing a booth at a community event for an animal rescue group, and Jordan showed up with a big grin and a generous donation. We hit it off immediately over our shared obsession with dogs. Fast forward 3 years, wedding bells, dancing until midnight, promises whispered under fairy lights. It felt like a fairy tale. Then there's my sister Erica, 34. Growing up, it was always Natalie the quiet one, Erica the spark. We were only 2.5 years apart, but you'd think we came from different galaxies. Erica was outgoing, magnetic, the kind of girl who could walk into a room and own it without trying. I was the bookworm, the background noise. Our parents, middle class to the bone and tirelessly hardworking, always insisted they loved us equally. Maybe they did, but it didn't change the fact that Erica looked at me like I was competition in a race I never signed up for. There were signs, even back then. I remember when I was 13 and won the city's science fair. My parents took us out to celebrate, balloons tied to our booth at a little Italian place downtown. Halfway through dinner, Erica started cracking jokes, loud enough for the next table to hear, about how being a nerd wouldn't pay my bills. When Mum asked her to knock it off, she stormed out. The celebration ended with my mum dabbing her eyes with a napkin and Dad angrily paying the check. That night should have been about me. Instead, it was another episode of The Erica Show. I should have remembered that pattern. When I first brought Jordan home, Erica's behaviour was weird, overly friendly, laughing a little too hard at his jokes, touching his arm when she didn't need to. I told myself it was nothing. She's just being Erica, I thought. Jordan brushed it off too, flashing me that boyish smile that once melted every worry I had. I wanted to believe them both. I needed to believe them. But about a year ago, the cracks started to show. Jordan became different, more glued to his phone, coming home late, whispering vague excuses about project deadlines at his startup job. I kept telling myself he was just stressed, growing pains of a new company. Until the night I found his phone buzzing under the bed. He was asleep, knocked out cold from what he called a long day at the office. I wasn't even snooping, not really, when I picked it up. The screen lit up with a notification. Miss you already, Erica. My stomach flipped. In a haze, hands shaking, I opened his messages. Hundreds of texts. Some flirty, some filthy, some so cruel that even now I can't reread them without feeling like I'm swallowing glass. Dates, secret meetups, inside jokes that made a mockery of everything I thought I had. I sat there on the edge of the bed, clutching that stupid phone like it was a live grenade, and maybe it was. Because the second I understood what I was seeing, something inside me detonated, but I didn't blow up. Not immediately. Instead, I did what Erica and Jordan would never expect. I planned. First, I started gathering proof. I installed a discreet little security camera in the living room and our bedroom. Yeah, probably illegal. Definitely desperate. But I wasn't interested in courtroom drama. I needed the truth. And I got it. Footage of them laughing on my couch, kissing against my bookshelves, moving together in the bed Jordan once swore he could only sleep in with me by his side. Each new file was like a knife to the chest. Still, I stayed quiet, smiling at family dinners, nodding along to Erica's fake little stories about how busy she was lately, pretending Jordan's distant hugs didn't burn my skin. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. No, I was going to destroy them. The opportunity came in the form of our annual family barbecue, a decades-old tradition at my parents' place. All the uncles, aunts, cousins, second cousins. More potato salad than God ever intended. A perfect audience. On the day of the reunion, I played my role perfectly. I helped Mum hang up streamers, teased my little nephews about their video games, even laughed when Erica nudged Jordan playfully in front of everyone. My insides were rotting, but you wouldn't have known it to look at me. After dinner, while everyone lounged in the living room, I stood up. I have something special to show you all, I said, holding up a flash drive. A little compilation I made. People clapped. Someone joked about it being another one of my nerdy projects. Oh, it was a project, all right. When the video started, it wasn't a slideshow of wedding memories. It was Erica and Jordan, in my house, on my couch, on my bed. The room went silent. My mother dropped the tray of lemon bars. My father's face turned so red I thought he might have a stroke. Jordan lunged toward the TV like he could stop it, but my cousins, God bless them, blocked him. Erica stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a broken marionette. I didn't say much. Just let the footage speak for itself. Then, calmly, I projected a set of screenshots, their texts, their plans to sneak away, their disgusting nicknames for each other. You could hear a pin drop, or maybe just my father's heavy breathing, trying to process the wreckage of the family he thought he knew. Nobody moved for a long time after the video ended. I stood there, arms crossed, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. Jordan was stammering something, hands half raised like he could erase what everyone just saw if he waved hard enough. Erica, my sister, my blood, just stood there, cheeks flushed, blinking fast like she could cry her way out of it. Finally, my dad spoke. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked halfway through, and it made something inside me twist. I hated that he had to see it. I hated that my mum was sitting there clutching the armrest, like it was the only thing holding her together. Jordan tried to start with the usual garbage. "Nat, listen, it's not what it looks like." I cut him off. Calm, cold. "Save it, Jordan. Everyone just saw exactly what it is." The excuses started pouring out like sewage. Jordan blamed stress, claimed he'd felt neglected, said he didn't mean for it to happen. Erica tried to paint me as the villain, claiming I pushed them together by being emotionally distant. Classic, but nobody was buying it. Not this time. I told them and everyone else the full timeline, how long it had been going on, how many lies they'd told, how many dinners they sat through, laughing and smiling at me across the table while stabbing me in the back. There were shouts, a lot of them. My uncle had to physically restrain one of my cousins from taking a swing at Jordan. Meanwhile, I just stood there, weirdly calm, like the storm had already passed inside me, and all that was left was the wreckage. I filed for divorce the next morning. I didn't give Jordan a heads up. He got served at work probably right after one of his startup team meetings about honesty and company culture. I hope the irony tasted as bitter going down as it felt watching it all happen. My parents. Well, that's where things got messy. They were horrified by what Erica and Jordan had done, no doubt. But they hated even more that I had aired the dirty laundry for the whole extended family to see. We could have handled this privately, my mum said, voice trembling. And let them keep lying to everyone? I asked. Pretend everything was fine while they built a life behind my back? She didn't have an answer, just wiped at her eyes and turned away. Dad was quieter, but he didn't argue. He just sat there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Some relatives thought I went too far, the ones who cared more about family image than actual family. But plenty stood with me. My Aunt Liz texted me later that night, proud of you. They deserved worse. For the first month, I kept thinking it was a nightmare I'd wake up from. I'd roll over and Jordan would be snoring beside me, the dog curled up at our feet, and I'd laugh about how vivid the dream felt. But every morning I woke up, the house was a little emptier, a little colder. The bed was too big. The silences were too loud. And every single day I chose to keep moving anyway. Jordan tried to contact me, of course. Emails, voicemails, letters shoved through the mail slot, swinging wildly between weeping apologies and raging accusations. I made a mistake, he'd write. You ruined our lives, he'd snarl the next day. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I blocked his number, blocked Erica's too. Somehow she still managed to reach out, through family, through old mutual friends, even through anonymous social media accounts. She kept pushing the same narrative. I was cold. I drove Jordan away. She was just there for him, as if she didn't choose to cross every line between us. As if love was something you accidentally tripped and fell into. My parents kept trying to broker some kind of peace. You're still sisters, my mum whispered during one phone call. Sisters don't do what she did, I said. Not to someone they love. The silence that followed was heavy, final. Weeks turned into months. The divorce moved forward, slow and grinding like everything legal seems to be. Jordan tried to contest it at first, claimed I violated his privacy by recording him. But my lawyer, a woman named Tanya, who could peel paint off walls with just a look, made it clear that we didn't even need the videos. The text messages were more than enough. Facing an ugly public defeat, Jordan folded. We settled out of court, clean, simple, and mercifully fast once he realized he had no real ground to stand on. He got his freedom. I got mine. Erica faded from my day-to-day life like a ghost, but not from the family drama. She started spinning new stories, playing the victim harder than ever. She told anyone who would listen that I had set them up, that I wanted to catch them, wanted to destroy her life because I was jealous of how happy she and Jordan were. I guess delusion is cheaper than therapy, but what really drove the knife deeper was my parents. They never said it out loud, but I could hear it in the pauses, the sighs, the strained way they talked to me. They wanted me to forgive, to move on, to be the bigger person. It took me a long time, too long, to realize they weren't asking for healing. They were asking for silence. They didn't want to fix what was broken. They just wanted to pretend it was never shattered in the first place. I couldn't give them that. I won't ever give them that. Life didn't magically snap back to normal after the divorce papers were signed. It's funny, you think once you cut the cancer out, the healing will start right away. But sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes it feels like your body still remembers the disease even after it's gone. I focused on rebuilding. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, late nights, anything that kept my mind from drifting back to what I lost. I started hiking again too, long, punishing treks that left me breathless and sore in the best way. It helped to feel small against the mountains, to remember that my pain was just a tiny thing in a huge, wide world. Somewhere along the way, I found parts of myself I'd forgotten. Parts that didn't belong to Jordan, or Erica, or even my family. Just me. Meanwhile, the family kept splintering behind the scenes. Some relatives stayed solidly on my side. Others tiptoed around the wreckage, pretending neutrality was noble when really it was just cowardice. My parents kept pushing, kept trying to stitch together a version of reality where we could all gather around the same table again, smiling like mannequins. Then came the final twist, the one nobody saw coming. About a year after everything blew up, I got a call from my mum. She was crying so hard it took a few minutes to understand her. When I finally did, I had to sit down. Erica was pregnant. And the father? Jordan. Apparently, after the dust had settled, they hadn't stayed together, but that didn't stop them from one last disaster. One last permanent connection they couldn't deny or undo. Mum was torn between heartbreak and excitement at the idea of a grandchild. Dad, ever the peacekeeper, kept saying, "Maybe this baby will heal the family." I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth out loud. Some things break too deep to be fixed with a new life. The news hit me harder than I wanted it to. Not because I cared about Jordan and Erica anymore. I didn't. But because it forced me to confront something I hadn't wanted to admit. They got to move forward, even after everything they did, and I had to figure out how to live with that. Mum begged me to be involved, to come to baby showers, to send gifts, to support family. She said it like an order wrapped in a plea, like she couldn't understand why I even hesitated. I told her quietly, without anger, that I couldn't be part of it. Not because I hated the baby, not even because I hated Erica or Jordan anymore, but because I loved myself more now. And stepping back was the only way I could keep that love alive. The silence on the other end of the phone was brutal. I could almost hear her heart breaking through the line. But I stood firm. I moved away not long after that. A new city, a new job, a new chapter. Funny thing is, packing up the old house was less sad than I thought it would be. Every object, every box, felt lighter the farther I got from the people who tried to weigh me down. I donated my wedding dress. I deleted old photos. I kept only what was mine, what was real. I even met someone new, eventually. His name's Adam. We met at a bookstore, reaching for the same worn copy of East of Eden. Cliché? Probably. But after everything, I'll take the clichés. They're honest in a way people sometimes aren't. Adam knows the whole story. I told him one night over coffee, expecting him to flinch or pull back. He didn't. He just listened, took my hand across the table and said, "You deserved better. You still do." Simple words, but they meant everything. I don't know where this new path will take me. I'm not naive enough anymore to think life owes me a happy ending, but I know this. I am not the woman who sat quietly while her husband and sister laughed behind her back. I am not the woman who begged for scraps of love from people who could only betray her. I am not the victim they tried to turn me into. I'm the survivor of a war they never even realized they started. And I'm still standing, still moving forward, still free. Whatever comes next, new love, new dreams, new heartbreaks even, it will be mine. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Story 3. I never thought I'd be the one texting my brother to run from his own wedding. But life's funny that way. My name's Zoe, 29F. I have 2 older brothers, Evan, 36M, and Marcus, 34M. This story is about Marcus, my middle brother, and the day he narrowly avoided tying his life to the wrong person. Our family history is complicated, to say the least. Our parents split when I was barely 3 years old, thanks mostly to my mother's. Let's call it uncontrollable jealousy. Dad stuck it out longer than he should have, but when Mum started accusing me, a literal toddler, of trying to replace her, he finally had enough. Mum didn't exactly take it well. She latched onto a new guy almost instantly, a dude with 2 sons from a previous marriage, and threw herself into some kind of competitive parenting frenzy. For a while, we bounced between households, but the vibe was always hostile. Dad eventually remarried a woman named Lynn, honestly the closest thing to a mother figure we ever had. She was kind, steady, Mom. She called her every slur she could invent and accused Dad of cheating even before they married. When Lynn died suddenly in a car accident, it shattered us. I remember Dad calling Mum in the middle of the night to let her know he'd be picking us up early for the funeral. Instead, she took us on a celebration trip, her words, and when we broke down crying once we realized what had happened, she told us only worthless brats cry for strangers. That was it. Dad filed for full custody the next day. He still, unbelievably, kept a line open for us to see her if we wanted. Paid for our flights. Sent cards on birthdays. Never poisoned us against her, even though she didn't deserve half that grace. As soon as each of us turned 18, we started peeling away. Contact dwindled to almost nothing. Last time I physically saw her was at my high school graduation, where she loudly told anyone who'd listen that we were selfish, ungrateful kids. And her new husband chimed in with worse. That was over a decade ago. We've been no contact ever since. Enter Mia. Marcus met her 3 years ago. She knew our history, heard all the horror stories, smiled and nodded and said she understood. Spoiler, she didn't. At first, it was little things, suggesting we reconsider inviting Mom to Christmas, telling Marcus that family's family, no matter what. We chalked it up to naive optimism until she started slipping passive-aggressive jabs into conversations. Still, Marcus loved her. We figured if she was willing to drop the family reunification campaign, maybe they could make it work. Fast forward to the wedding day. The church was stunning. All white flowers and golden light filtering through stained glass. I was wrangling last-minute details with Evan when I noticed them. Mom, her husband a walking midlife crisis in a suit, and their 2 sons sitting front row centre like they owned the place. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and texted Marcus. Me, they're here. Front row, he called me instantly. I could hear the panic crackling through the line. At first, he thought maybe they'd crashed the wedding, like some deranged rom-com gone wrong. But when he called Mia to warn her, she didn't sound surprised. She said, and I quote, "I invited them." "It's time you made peace with your mother." Marcus didn't even hang up. He just said, "Come get me." Evan and I split up. He stayed to deal with damage control at the church. I sped across town to Marcus's apartment, where he was still getting ready. When he opened the door, he looked hollow. No anger, no tears, just this eerie, resigned calm. We locked the doors, turned off our phones, and barricaded ourselves inside like kids hiding from a storm. Meanwhile, chaos exploded at the church. Mia's family, our cousins, mutual friends, everyone trying to find Marcus, trying to guilt trip or sweet talk him into coming back. Even Mom's husband called and said, "Guess you really are worthless after all." Classy. Marcus refused to budge. We stayed holed up that whole night, binge-watching bad reality TV and inhaling pizza. Dad came over later with Evan. None of us said much. We didn't have to. We were just there. Together. Mia's side was furious. Her parents even threatened to sue Marcus for wedding expenses. But he made it clear he'd rather repay every penny than marry someone who thought ambushing him with his abuser was a gift. And the crazy part, through all of it, Mia never apologized. She doubled down, sent a text to Evan saying she thought it would be a beautiful surprise, a way for Marcus to heal. Yeah, because nothing says healing like inviting your trauma to your wedding. The fallout was immediate and brutal. I had to deactivate my social media accounts because the harassment was non-stop. Random people from Mia's side calling us ungrateful, selfish, dramatic. But the more the truth came out, the more people started drifting to our side. When Evan stood in front of the stunned guests at the church and announced that the wedding was off, he didn't flinch. Just told them all gifts would be returned, thanked them for coming, and politely asked them to leave. "Mia!" She collapsed into hysterics in the church parking lot, tried calling Marcus 27 times, left voicemails that swung wildly between sobbing and screaming. We didn't answer any of them. Instead, we packed up Marcus's stuff from the apartment he was supposed to share with Mia, changed the locks on the house Dad had gifted them, reclaimed everything that belonged to him, right down to the houseplants and coffee mugs. No drama, no screaming matches. Just action. Because that's what you do when someone shows you who they really are. And Mia had made herself crystal clear. By the time the sun came up, it was like the whole town knew what happened. Marcus's phone was flooded with texts and calls, not just from Mia, but from her sisters, her cousins, her best friend from college, even some mutual friends trying to mediate. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. But Marcus? He just sat there on the living room floor, eating cold pizza and reading every single message like it was a weather report. Completely blank. I knew he wasn't okay, but I also knew better than to push. Dad made pancakes around noon, which Marcus didn't touch. Evan cracked a joke about how we should get matching runaway groom shirts. Marcus actually smiled at that, the first real smile I'd seen since the night before. That night, Mia's parents showed up at Dad's house. No heads up, no call, just pulled into the driveway like we owed them something. Dad told them to leave before he called the cops. They left, but not before threatening, again, to sue Marcus for wasting their daughter's life. Because apparently 3 years of dating and one awful betrayal entitled them to damages. Go figure. Meanwhile, the real kicker came 2 days later. Mia posted a sob story online. Long, dramatic paragraphs about how her fiancé had abandoned her at the altar because he couldn't let go of childhood trauma. She painted herself as this saintly martyr trying to heal a broken family. She conveniently left out the part where she ambushed him with his abuser. At first, some people bought it. Friends of hers were sharing the post, talking about how marriage is hard and he should have tried harder. But little by little, the truth leaked out. Somebody from the guest list who overheard Evan's announcement posted a comment, then another, then someone else. And just like that, the tide turned. Mia deleted the post by the end of the week. But the real bomb dropped when Marcus got a text from Mia's best friend, Tom, who'd actually been in Marcus's corner from the start. He said Mia was threatening to trash Marcus's stuff if he didn't at least talk to her. Like blackmail. Marcus didn't even blink. He told Tom to stall her, grabbed Evan, 2 cousins, and my boyfriend, and they stormed the apartment. They didn't yell, they didn't argue. They didn't even acknowledge Mia when she started sobbing on the sidewalk. They just packed every last thing Marcus owned into the trucks and drove away. You want to know what hurt the most? Marcus didn't even take the engagement ring back. He didn't care. He just wanted out. A few days later, MIA's family asked for a meeting. Marcus agreed, but only if it happened at Dad's house, and only if we were there too. When they arrived, Mia looked rough. Eyes swollen, face blotchy, still trying to act like she was the victim. Her parents flanked her like bodyguards, faces tight and red with anger. She started right away, trying to get Marcus alone. He didn't move, just crossed his arms and said, "Say what you need to say." She launched into a speech about the importance of family, how she only wanted the best for him, and how it was wrong for him to stay estranged from his mother. She even implied, no, she flat out said, that if they had kids, she was scared Marcus would teach them to hate her. That was the match that lit the gasoline. Marcus let her talk herself into a hole. Then, when she finally paused, he hit her with everything he'd been holding back. He told her she was manipulative, that she wasn't the woman he thought he loved, just a mask that cracked under pressure. He said he pitied her, that staying with someone like her would have been its own kind of prison. He said, and I'll never forget this, "I don't hate you. You're not important enough for that anymore." Mia's mum gasped like she'd been slapped. Her dad, trying to salvage some pride, said Marcus was throwing away a good woman. Marcus just shook his head and said, "Good women don't lie and trap." Then he laid it out. The wedding was off. The gifts were being returned. No, he didn't want the honeymoon or the shared furniture. No, he didn't want one last talk. No, he wouldn't ever be in a room with her again unless legally required. And if they tried suing him, well, Marcus had receipts. Literal ones. All the proof anyone would need to show exactly who screwed over who. They backed off after that. Kind of. The next day, Mia posted, wait for it, that she was pregnant. Of course, half the town started buzzing again. People messaged Marcus asking if he was really going to abandon his child. Marcus demanded proof. Mia hemmed and hawed, finally agreed to meet at a clinic. Marcus brought me and Dad along for backup. Guess what? She wasn't pregnant. She admitted it, after crying, screaming, and accusing Marcus of making her feel unsafe. She said she just wanted him to talk to her again. Yeah, because fake pregnancies always make people fall back in love. That was when Marcus blocked her number for good. And we all changed our numbers too, just to be safe. We tried to get back to normal after that. We threw Marcus a non-wedding party, lots of bad karaoke, too much cake, and cheap champagne. We played board games until 3 a.m. and laughed until our faces hurt. Mia and her family stayed in town for a while longer, probably hoping Marcus would crack. He didn't. Dad even started joking about installing a moat around the house. "Raise the drawbridge!" he'd shout every time a random car slowed down outside. It worked, honestly. We needed to laugh. Because even though Marcus was free, heartbreak doesn't just vanish. Some nights, I caught him sitting outside on the porch, staring at the sky like he was trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. I get it. You don't just mourn the person you lost. You mourn the future you thought you had with them. But Marcus, he's tough. Not because he doesn't hurt, but because he keeps moving forward anyway. Dad told him something that stuck with all of us. You didn't lose a wife. You dodged a lifetime of misery. That's a win, son. And he's right. Mia showed Marcus exactly who she was. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus chose himself. The weeks after the wedding that wasn't felt weird. Not bad, not good. Just weird. Like standing on a shore after a storm, staring at all the broken branches and wondering what comes next. Marcus moved back home full-time for a while. Dad didn't even blink, just made up the guest room like it was always meant to be waiting for him. We kept it simple. Board games, pizza nights, dumb movies from our childhood. Evan started a running joke that Marcus should get a tattoo of a sprinting groom. Marcus actually considered it for a second before laughing it off. There was something healing about all of us being in one house again, even if the reason behind it sucked. Every once in a while, there were reminders. We got calls from wedding vendors trying to confirm cancellations. Marcus got a certified letter from Mia's parents, demanding repayment for emotional damages. We laughed. So hard, Dad nearly choked on his coffee. Mia posted a few sad, cryptic quotes online about betrayal and cowardice, but the audience for that drama had mostly dried up by then. When you fake a pregnancy and lie to everyone you know, it turns out people lose sympathy fast. Dad said it best one night over beers. You don't have to argue with people like that. You just have to outlast their noise. And we did. The real turning point came a couple months later. Marcus had been helping Dad repaint the house, half as therapy, half as home improvement, when he announced he didn't want the house Dad had gifted him and Mia anymore. It wasn't about the money or the memories. It just didn't feel like his anymore. He didn't want to live in a place built on broken promises. So after some long talks, he decided to rent it out. Start clean somewhere else when he was ready. In the meantime, he threw himself into running. Literally, signed up for a marathon. Started training like a madman. We all joked he was running away again, but honestly, I think he was running towards something this time. Health, healing, himself. We even started joking about it more openly. Dad got him a Runaway Groom t-shirt for Christmas. Marcus wore it to family dinner like a badge of honor. Some people think humor is avoidance. For us, it's survival. It's how we stitch ourselves back together. Life kept moving. Evan and his wife announced they were adopting a beautiful, bright-eyed baby girl who immediately stole everyone's hearts. Marcus was there the day they brought her home, held her like she was made of glass. I think in that moment, he realized that real family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shows up when it matters. Mia tried one last time to make contact, sent some long email about what could have been and maybe someday. Marcus didn't even finish reading it, just hit delete. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. Sometimes it's a door you lock without looking back. By the time spring rolled around, it felt like we could finally breathe easy again. Dad started semi-retiring, spending more time with his girlfriend Rita, who we all adored. Evan and his wife were drowning in baby giggles and sleepless nights. I got engaged to my longtime boyfriend, Matt, with full family approval and zero drama, thank God. And Marcus? He met someone. A woman named Sophie. Sweet, steady, a little sarcastic, with a laugh that made you feel lighter just hearing it. She knew about the whole Mia situation up front. We don't keep secrets anymore. And instead of running away, she just said, "Sounds like you're overdue for some peace. They're taking it slow. No rush, no pressure. Just letting life happen." It's weird, watching Marcus fall for someone again. Beautiful, but weird. Like seeing the first green sprout poke through the dirt after a long, hard winter. Hope. Real, messy, fragile hope. Sometimes late at night when we're all together, playing cards, laughing over bad inside jokes, I catch Marcus smiling to himself. And I know he's healing. Not because Mia apologized, she never really did. Not because everything's perfect, it isn't. But because he chose himself. Because he trusted that the life he deserved was worth fighting for. And maybe that's the real happy ending. Not a perfect wedding, not some Instagram-worthy love story. Just a man standing in his own skin, proud of the scars he earned surviving. For anyone reading this and wondering if it's worth it to walk away from people who hurt you, it is. It's messy. It's painful. It's lonely sometimes. But it's worth it. Because you don't owe your life to people who think love is just another form of control. You owe it to yourself. Marcus did. And we'll be cheering him on every step of the way